Have you ever felt like you're pouring information into a leaky bucket? You spend all these hours learning only to feel it all just drip away? Well, today we're going to build a playbook to patch those holes, and for good. We're combining a really powerful mindset for learning with a tactical system from Coach Justin Sung called PACER. The goal? To turn you into a much more efficient and effective learner.
So let's start with a problem that I know we have all faced. You spend hours, maybe a whole weekend, reading a book or watching a lecture, and in the moment you feel like, yep, got it, I understand this. But then a week goes by, and it's mostly a blur, right? Where does all that harder knowledge actually go?
And get this, it's not just you, it's not just a feeling. Research suggests that we can forget up to 90% of new information over time. 90%. That turns hours of your dedicated effort into a massive waste of time. It is, quite literally, like pouring water into that leaky bucket we talked about.
And this quote right here, this is the core idea that changes everything. The goal isn't just to shovel more information into our brains faster, it's to digest it properly, so it actually stays there. And to do that, we need to ditch the old methods and adopt a completely new playbook. It all starts with our mindset.
Okay, first things first, we need to build the engine for our learning machine. Now, this isn't about some single magic trick. It's about shifting your fundamental approach to learning itself. And it's built on 3 core principles that are going to power everything else that we do. So what are they? Well, these 3 principles are the effort-time exchange, the omni-learner principle, and the iteration effect. Let's break down what each one actually means, and, more importantly, how it challenges the way most of us were taught to learn.
Let's tackle the first principle. And honestly, this one feels completely wrong at first. We tend to think that faster learning should feel easier, but it turns out the opposite is true. Our brain builds stronger, more durable memories when it really has to work for them. So instead of just passively rereading a vocabulary list, you force yourself to recall a word without looking. That little bit of struggle, that's the good stuff. That's the effort-time exchange. You invest a little bit of mental sweat right now to save yourself hours of restudying later on.
Second, we need to throw out a really persistent myth, the whole idea of learning styles. You've probably heard it a million times. I'm a visual learner, or I'm an auditory learner. Well, decades of research show that's just not how it works. The real skill is becoming an omni-learner, someone who can take information from any source, whether it's a dense textbook, a fast-paced lecture, or a complicated diagram, and effectively organize it. And finally, there's the iteration effect. Think about how most of us study. We learn for weeks, and then we test ourselves at the very end with a big exam. That's like building an entire engine and only then checking to see if any of the parts fit. A much better way is to use a rapid cycle. You learn a small concept, you immediately try to explain it back to yourself, you see where you get stuck, and that's your feedback, and then you refine your understanding. You find your mistakes early and often, before they have a chance to set in.
So, we have our engine, our mindset. It's primed for effort, it's adaptable, and it's all about constant testing. But an engine is pretty useless without a machine to actually power. And that's where our toolbox comes in. A practical, hands-on system for dealing with all the information you come across.
And this is the PACER method. It is our tactical toolbox. The big idea here is that not all information is created equal. I mean, learning a grammar rule is completely different from memorizing a vocabulary word, right? PACER gives us 5 categories so we can use the right tool for each specific piece of information. That's how we lock it into our long-term memory. Let's make this super concrete with a language learning example. Let's say you're learning Korean. P is for procedural. That's the how-to. This is the physical act of writing Hangul characters or practicing your pronunciation. You learn this stuff by doing it. A is for analogous, which is connecting new ideas to what you already know. You might compare Korean sentence structure to English and really dig into the differences. C is for conceptual. This is the big picture. It's not just one fact, but a whole network of ideas. Like the complex system of honorifics and politeness levels. You have to map that whole system out. And finally, E and R, evidence and reference, are the details. E would be example sentences, while R is the raw data, like vocabulary lists or verb conjugation charts. Those you just have to store and rehearse. And this brings us to the absolute golden rule of this entire system. You have got to balance consumption with digestion. Just reading chapter after chapter of a textbook without stopping to practice or map or critique, that's the learning equivalent of just stuffing your face with food. You might feel full, but you're not getting any of the nourishment. Spend less time consuming and way more time digesting. Okay, now for the aha moment.
Let's see how these two big pieces, the mindset and the system, lock together perfectly. Because the mindset principles, they're the engine that drives the PACER toolbox. They're not separate ideas at all. They're two halves of a single, really powerful learning machine. One is the why, and the other is the what.
So here's how it works. That effort-time exchange, the idea of embracing struggle, tells you where to apply that effort for the biggest bang for your buck. You don't waste it on mindlessly drilling reference vocabulary for hours. No, you invest it in the hard work of conceptual mapping, like really struggling to understand the difference between the Japanese particles wa and ga. That's the kind of struggle that pays huge dividends.
And what about the iteration effect? That rapid cycle of test, feedback, refine. Well, that is the very engine that drives your digestion of PACER information. You practice a skill, you see where you messed up, and you refine it. You rehearse a fact, you realize you forgot it, and that strengthens the memory. It's this constant, productive feedback loop.
And the OmniLearner principle, well, that's the glue that holds all of this together. It's the skill that lets you listen to a lecture and, on the fly, categorize what you're hearing. You ask yourself, is this a procedural? How to? Is this a big concept? Or is this just some supporting evidence? That real-time categorization is how you know which PACER tool to grab from your toolbox.
So let's put this all together. We've built the engine with our mindset, and we've assembled the toolbox with PACER. Now, let's write out the step-by-step instructions for your new learning playbook, something you can start using, like today.
Here it is in 4 pretty simple steps. First, adopt the mindset. Go into every learning session ready for that beneficial struggle. Second, as you're learning, you have to actively identify and categorize the information using PACER. Third, immediately apply the correct digestion tool for whatever category you just identified. And fourth, always balance your time. Stop consuming when you run out of time to actually digest.
This playbook is just a beginning. The real change, the real learning, comes from actually putting it into action. So looking at everything we've just covered, from embracing struggle all the way to using the PACER system, what is the one single change you're going to make to how you learned this week? Start small, be consistent with it, and just watch what happens.